praise Dr. Berta, and I think your whole family I've now met, for what you have accomplished with this event and what you have accomplished in Europe and in technology in general. I don't know of a better done, invitation-only event that draws the mixture of talent and IQ from around the globe as the one you have founded. So my congratulations to you. Many, many, many years to come. I have a lot of things I wanted to talk about. I wanted to start by making I have a real talk to talk about, but I wanted to make an important announcement about Google. You know, we had a very, very good year and a very strong quarter and so forth. We looked in this year, and in particular in our prospects for growth in Europe. And our businesses globally are doing well, both our core business as well as our adjacent businesses, our hockey stick businesses, as we call them. It's all very, very good. And as a result, we've decided to make some pretty significant investments, and I'm very happy to announce that we're going to add more than 1,000 employees in Europe this year. We are going to invest in Europe. To give you an example, we're going to invest hundreds of people in Germany. And we have a very large Munich engineering center, which is incredible technology, which we're also going to be expanding. So it's a it's a good reason to be in Germany. It's a good reason to be here. I think all of you understand the German miracle and the sort of tremendous success of the country and what they've been able to accomplish. And we're going to continue to invest for all of those good reasons. What I really would like to do is to talk about the next decade and how technology and the world we live in will change. And I'm very personally excited about my next decade at Google. I think it's even going to be better than the last decade at Google. So from my perspective, this is a pretty good plan, right? And this is what I want to work on, and I have a feeling that all of us are going to be working on this together. And what's interesting about this new model is everything's changing again. And I've actually become convinced that we're getting to the point where technology is finally going to actually serve us. In my whole career, I felt like I was serving the technology. It was always me who had to fix the computer, right? Everybody here can relate to that. And I think finally now we're going to get to the point where the technology does what we want, and that's what I want to talk about. And so let me suggest a happiness theorem. That computers will finally make it impossible for us to do the things we actually want to do. Right? So to be with other people, right? People you love, people you care about, people you enjoy. To find happiness in general, and to make the world a better place. There are lots of examples of this. There's a company called Ushahidi, which is crowdsourcing information around the globe. They start, in fact, they're here. There, raise your hand. And what's interesting about them is they started off in Kenya, basically around disasters. But the principle, the underlying architecture of using crowdsourced information is incredibly powerful. Because people know what's going on in their environment, and we can finally collect that information and use it to figure out what's really going on, as opposed to what people think is going on. There are lots and lots of examples. Haiti, Russia, cleanups in New York and Boston, the snow, and so forth and so on. Another example has to do with the use of telemetry in medicine. There are projects now to take essentially real-time monitoring, as you would know it, and put it on mobile phones. It's obviously better to have your phone monitor your vital signs if you're an ill person, or even if you're a person worried about some medical thing, than anything else, because your phone's always on and always with you. Right? It makes perfect sense. This is a material change. It has a huge impact on the cost structure of medicine, quality of care, all those kinds of things. You know, you can do it with all sorts of ways. You can do it with wireless sensors, you can do it with touch sensors, and so all of those things are in development. It's interesting that a developer for Android developed glasses for Android where you basically put them on and it translates what you see in the Android camera into the way that people who are colorblind see color. So literally looking through the camera, they can see color that they could not before. I didn't even think this was possible. There's so many examples when you take computing and you take the perspective that it's supposed to serve us. And this is accelerating, and it seems like it's accelerating faster and faster and faster and faster. fundamentally because technology underneath is accelerating, there's all sorts of interesting network effects. And there's sort of three that I wanted to sort of talk about. In the area of mobile, the smartphone is more than the iconic device of our time. The smartphone is the device of our time. And smartphones in all forms, including, and I'm including tablets here in one way or the other. There are all sorts of examples of this. You know, everybody uses it. Simple example, if you have a child, your child is asleep or online. There are only two states of children, right? Right? I don't think, and in fact, if they wake up in the middle of the night, what do? They're online. You check. Trust me, it's true. They're doing whatever children do online at their appropriate ages, but you get the idea. And it's interesting that in 2 years, smartphone sales will surpass PC sales. The growth rates are faster. It's a larger market, all of that kind of stuff. And what's interesting is that we've been tracking the mobile web, and the mobile web is growing 8 times faster than the equivalent PC desktop web at the same point in its history. So not only is it growing fast, it's growing faster, and it's coming at us faster. At Google, we see this in our own data. You see it in the sense of excitement and mobility and activity and startups and all the people who came here at the conference. And one of the things that has this implication is that most people will now find, the majority of humans will get themselves online with a mobile device, not with a PC. And this is beginning to be true, just as it was true 10 years ago, that you could see that the average person would not have a landline, they would just have a mobile phone to talk. For the same principle, they're now not going to have PCs, they're going to have mobile devices of one kind or another that are tethered to that information, using them for all the obvious reasons. And if you think that, you think you like your mobile phone, imagine a person who's never had a computer at all, and they get a modern smartphone connected to an overloaded local area network. Think about what that does to their ability to, the change, the binary change of information from the local context of their village to literally all of the world's information. So this mobile revolution, which I call mobile first, right? The simple guideline is, whatever you're doing, do mobile first. And what I've noticed is that the top developers, the smartest typically young firms, they're doing mobile things first. They start with the presumption of connectivity, location, and locality and interaction in a way that my generation never foresaw. And in terms of pervasive connectivity, another trend I want to highlight, the mobile computing is going hand in hand with this amazing amount of data networking that we have. And what's interesting, I would argue that devices that are not connected to the internet are not interesting anymore. Right, so you have one of these sort of stored music players, not very interesting. Take the same stored music player, connect it to a Wi-Fi network, to a music server of one kind or another, and all of a sudden, it's incredibly interesting. So take every single device you know that has some form of a CPU in it, and start thinking, I want it connected to my Wi-Fi network. And that's one way to think about the next few years. And the networks, by the way, the telcos who are spending gobs and gobs of capital are now fundamentally deploying a next generation of network called LTE for long-term evolution. It's rated at 50 megabits. The measured performance is between 8 and 10 megabits. And I think that's a realistic expectation. For those of you that are working on 3G networks, you'll typically get about a megabit. In Europe, you'll get 2. In the US, you get 1, because the US is always half of Europe, but you get the idea. It's on the order of magnitude improvement. And the LTE standard, again, developed here and in Sweden, the combination of two will roll through the rest of the world over the next year or two. And amazingly, the United States is also going to be getting this. So for me, I remember thinking, if I could just have a pervasive 1 megabit, I would be happy. Right? I remember spending years thinking, all I want is 1 megabit everywhere I go. And the reason is because I wanted to be able to do my email with some speed and handle all those attachments people sent me. It makes sense. Well, now I want my 10 megabits. What can I do with my 10 megabits? Interactive video. Reasonably compressed, reasonably real-time interactive video. And there are technologies in development which would allow, for example, automatic transcoding and all the other things that are necessary to make that kind of video seamless and so forth and so on. It's all happening in the next year. What's interesting, by the way, is Germany, since we're here in Germany, is really the leader in LTE deployment here in Europe, and will be the first European country to have LTE on the 800 megahertz spectrum, which is indeed one of the sort of core spectrums everybody uses. And one of the interesting estimates is that there's about 35 billion devices now connected to the internet. No one really knows. Because if every device gets connected to the internet, we'll stop counting, which is where we're going. The third component I wanted to talk about had to do with cloud computing. Now, I talked about the mobile devices, and everybody talks about their mobile devices, but they never give credit to the back end, to the infrastructure guys, to the servers that are doing all of that. But it goes hand in hand. Typical example. So we just launched a voice translation product that allows you to go to speak into your phone in your language, and it comes out of somebody else's phone in another language. Oh my God. Does this actually work? So we test it with our employees who speak multiple languages, and it seems to work. And you know, it's the old thing of when you see something which is magic, and of course you know it really isn't magic, you have to say like, how did this happen? It really is a wow moment. So how it actually works is when you talk to the phone, of course there's a computer inside the phone which digitizes your voice, and it doesn't do very much. It just sends your voice to some servers. How many servers? About 1,000, which you didn't pay for, which is a separate discussion. Send it to 1,000 servers, and what do? They vote, right? They vote in a complex way, and they say, what do we think this thing is? We think it's English. We think it's an English speaker. We think we understand the structure of English. They turn it into text. Then they send it to another set of computers. Those computers say, this is English text. We know how to translate from English text to German text. And then they send it to another set of computers which take German text, and they get it ready to send it to the other fellow's phone. And how long does that take? Less than a blink of an eye. That's what's so amazing. And does it work on every language? It will eventually work on 100 by 100. And it requires relatively little training, and it's done using statistical machine translation. So it scales, and it works against any language because of all the things that we know about language. To me, we've talked it years. I mean, you think about wars that have been started because people can't communicate. Right? Now, finally, at least we have a shot at miscommunication through digital translation, right? But at least people will be talking and trying to appreciate the differences in their scenarios. Another example. Here, in Munich, you take a picture of the famous church. The phone tells you the name of the church and where you are. How does it do that? Well, it takes a picture, digitizes the picture, sends it to a set of computers. What do? They vote. Okay. Is this a picture of an animal, mineral, vegetable, right? Looks like a building, looks like a landmark, so forth, and then they do essentially an image map to pictures of things, and they do a conformal mapping to what the image is, and then they tell you what it is. It works remarkably well. It works really well in a lot of things. So all of a sudden, it's not just the phone, but the phone and all those supercomputers together on this pervasive network, and that's cloud computing in the way that we will all experience it. So you can do other things. You know, you can take your phone and you can virtually ski downhill from in Vancouver on the Olympic runs, and it'll set that up for you, so you can have fun. You know, you're bored. You're sitting at the airport. I'll go skiing in Vancouver. You know, whatever. You get the idea. If you want to look at historical imagery of Munich in the post-war reconstruction, you can go from satellite photos all the way back from 1943 and watch the city get rebuilt and expand and become the great city that it is today. So the point here is this is not just one product. It's the mobile device, it's the network, it's the platform, it's the software architectures we can talk about if you're interested. How do you actually build all these software architectures? And they're all real now. Now this is not a new term. Bill Gates talked about it in 1990. He called it information at your fingertips. His quote was, information at your fingertips, all of the information that someone might be interested in, including information they can't even get today. We've been talking about this stuff for decades. And finally now the technology has caught up with the marketing and the vision and so forth and so on. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the sort of generational focus on making this real. So now, of course, we can digitize everything. So we at Google are busy digitizing Dead Sea Scrolls because they're worried that some of them are going to literally go away because of atmospherics. And if you think about it, computers can give you digital senses that you did not even have. Hearing and speaking and even understanding. So all of a sudden, computers are not the same as people, but they can really go back to that notion of making our lives, think of them as augmented humanity, making us better humans, making us where we want to go. It's interesting, these location-aware apps, and every day there's a surprise. So the latest one is a location-aware app, which when you are walking by, the street, it reminds you what errand you need based on the stores that are near you. So, oh, there's a dry cleaner to the right, you should be taking your dry cleaner to this. One idea after another, something useful for everybody every day. It's interesting, this has a political component which is quite significant. A political activist and blogger in Tunisia who had been arrested 2 weeks ago happened to have his phone on. And he let people know where he was, which was, by the way, in prison, using Google Latitude, obviously not something to joke about. So he was in custody inside the government building. As the revolution occurred, he was freed. Today, he is a government minister of that country. That's how fast this stuff changes, and imagine what that did for this gentleman. We have a project that we just started in Sudan, going back to this crowdsourcing notion of you trying to sort of crowdsource satellite imaging, publish all the satellite images, and you get people to tell you what's really going on. So something very, very serious, of course, is the Sudanese referendum. George Clooney and a team have organized this project. And what they're trying to do is to monitor the claims of the competing sides as to what's going on with respect to the amassing of soldiers. And you might imagine that the claims that are being made by the various government sides do not completely conform with reality as recorded on our satellite pictures. Right? Very, very interesting. Very, very powerful. Who knows what this will do, but transparency helps a lot. So to me, what this says is that there's a new possible definition for Google, coming back to what we do. So what drives us? The simple thing is, we basically want to give you your time back. Right? We want it to basically just speed matters. We want to make search faster. We want to make example after example. We did a thing called Google Instant. So just literally a few seconds shaved off of the searches that you do. We figured out that 2 to 5 seconds, like 100,000 man-years in the world or something like this. So again, small changes like that have huge implications in terms of people's time. Now available, by the way, in 40 countries. We did something called instant previews, where when you mouse over, you'll see previews of all the pages. This requires huge amounts of computation, by the way, which again, unfortunately, we have. And again, that saves you just that extra half second of trying to figure out what you care about. So where does it go? Well, I think it becomes more personal. And by the way, I need to say about 100 times, more personal with your permission. It's very, very important to understand the boundary of anonymity and personal, and the right choice, of course, is to let you decide where that boundary is. So